Hello, welcome to another edition of Candid Talk with Zainab Suleiman Okino. There have been cases of abductions in Nigeria with videos of harrowing experiences and traumatic experiences too from victims. For those who are lucky to be rescued, either through negotiations or payment of ransom, reintegrating into the society can be traumatic for the victims, while living with the knowledge of one's loved one in the hands of terrorists is no less agonizing. So in today's episode of Candid Talk, we'll be discussing the topic, abductions, coping with trauma and depression. My guest for today is Dr. Paul Ede Agbo, consultant psychiatrist with the Dalhatu Arab Specialist Hospital, Lafia, in Nasarawa State. Dr. Agbo, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So before the discussion proper starts, let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
That's great. It's good to see you.
Welcome back to Candid Talk with Zainab Suleiman Okino. And as I said earlier, before the break, we are discussing the topic abductions, coping with trauma and depression. And my guest is still Dr. Dr. Paul Ede Agbo, a consultant psychiatrist. So, Doctor, tell our viewers what it means to be abducted, that moment when you realize that, oh, you have become a victim of abduction. What goes on in the mind of the victims?
Okay. Once again, let me appreciate you for inviting me to this program. There are some natural responses that would occur in the face of danger. We summarize it in medicine, calling it the fight or flight response. If it's a situation where you can fight, the body prepares you to fight. And so danger hormones, let me simplify it, are released. Sugar is made available. And your muscles tense up. You want to fight.
Wow.
When you realize that it cannot happen, there's a sense of helplessness and hopelessness that sets in. That is what will happen to almost everybody. There's this sense of futility. I can't fight. Or if I fight, I may die. And so at that point, most people would give up. If we want to speak medically, you will say the first few moments will be one of anxiety.
Yeah.
So your heart will be racing, your mind will be, for some people, they'll tell you their minds just shut down. They couldn't think. And so it's easy in that period to command people. When somebody has given up, it's easy to command the person. And so sometimes you hear people say, why didn't they fight now? They were more than the gunmen. No. The mind has appraised the situation and has told you, if you do anything, you will die. And so it's like a herd movement. Once one person has been cowed, it's easy to make every other person follow. And so at that point, you just see people being led. You know, the situation we have now is reminiscent of what happened in the camps during the Second World War, the way they were, a few soldiers were able to head the Jews or the blacks or the
concentration camp.
Into concentration camps. And it appeared as though these people were stupid. Why didn't they fight?
How?
No, you can't fight because you're looking at the odds against you and your mind has told you you can't fight. And so you just become helpless and anxious. And then, of course, you stop eating, you cannot sleep, you're just wondering what next. And so it's a whole gamut of emotional turmoil that happens when you realize that you have been forcefully dislocated from your comfort zone to a strange place, not knowing what the future holds. So I think in summary, that's what basically happens.
You know, this trauma we are talking about is not just for the victims themselves, even their families. And because I've had a relation that was kidnapped, and the very first time I was called, I became nervous. I just spoke to him. They said, speak to her. I just spoke to him, and he said, you know, we are here now, if we should go and look for money. I said, what? So I became so nervous that I could not mediate. I had to call in someone else to negotiate. Yeah. So, I mean, I want to know, how do you expect them to respond?
There's this thing we watch on movies. Sometimes we see it in the situation we find ourselves in Nigeria, but it's not sustained. Where immediately somebody is kidnapped, forensic psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers should be sent to the home of the relatives. Because if you don't give them that support at that point in time, it's almost as though they are the ones who are kidnapped. And that's why it's easy for people to say, we will sell anything to free our relative. The same way that, in fact, the person who is kidnapped is even more situationally aware than the people who are outside. You don't even know what's happening. You can't see, you don't know who kidnapped them. You don't know the state your relative is in. You don't know what will happen. The person who is kidnapped at least is seeing his environment, he's seeing the people that kidnapped him. He probably is seeing others who were kidnapped and he's telling himself, maybe I will survive. You outside, you don't have that support. And so the same anxiety, the same terror, the same paralysis that happens to the victim also happens to the immediate family members. And so there's no separation really. The only thing that is different is the physical trauma that the victims are exposed to. Otherwise, the whole experience is the same. The same for relatives and for victims. There's no difference.
Yeah, one of the victims' family said the waiting alone is punishment. So that waiting game, and I could see it on the faces of remember the the 6 family members that were in the train attack. Yes. That became victims. Remember, they were recently released, and yes. I could see it on the faces of the members of the family. They were as traumatized as the victims themselves.
If not more so, because, like I said, you don't even have anything to hold on to. And the only thing you have is they may kill my relative, which the terrorists have made very clear they can do. So everybody is waiting. They could kill this person. They could kill this person. But the waiting is traumatic. The suspense is traumatic. We were not made to be under suspense for too long. Like I said, some stress hormones are released. And so when you are in that state for too long, you begin to break down. And so you don't even know what's going on. You wait, today they may call, tomorrow they may not call. They say they've killed one person. You're not sure. The human mind is not programmed not to know, not to be unsure. We need answers. And so when you don't get it, gradually you break down. And you discover that at the end of the day, caregivers would begin to use substances before their loved ones are released, because most times you'll be unable to sleep. You can't sleep. And the next thing is to go and meet a doctor or meet a quack. Give me something that would make me sleep. And substance abuse has started. So there are secondary effects to these things that we're talking about. But for now, let's just restrict ourselves. It's a terrible period. It's a terrible thing that happens when you are forced to wait, not knowing what will happen.
Doctor, that's really a new dimension to it that I'd never thought about it at all. And I'm scared. And you know, another thing is you wonder whether trauma can be temporary and whether it can lead to depression on the part of the victims and on the part of their family members.
Okay, let me use this as an illustration. For most victims of rape in childhood, they tell you that they live with a trauma for almost the entirety of their lives. They never, ever forget. They never, ever forget. That's just an incident. In some cases, an incident. In some cases, repeated incidences that have the ability to just transform the person's mind. I was talking to a friend yesterday who said her younger sister was raped when she went to school for admission. It wasn't like she even slept over. The person deceived her. Come, I can help you get admission. Let me go and pick something from my room. And he raped her. And this is like 30 years ago. The young lady has been unable to trust men since then. Imagine that you are now taken into a forest and you are raped repeatedly. When you come out, there are so many things. It shakes the fabric of your existence. One, we believe in God. Most people. We believe that God is good. Then we also try to be good so that God will be good to us. That's the general belief. Now, the God that I believe in didn't save me. He made these people kidnap me. He made them molest me repeatedly, not one person, repeatedly. When you come out, you now start questioning, is there God? And for many people, once you take away that thing of God, you've taken away their lives. There's nothing left. Once you take away God, for most of us in Nigeria, for most of us in Africa, whether it is the God that we know or the gods that people worship, once you take it away, you've taken away their lives. And so they come out, they stigmatize themselves, they blame themselves, the society is blaming them, nobody is helping them to see that things like this happen, and then they have this deep hatred for the Nigerian state. They may have hatred for colleagues who didn't suffer the same fate as they. They now also hate themselves, and then they start trying to damage themselves. And so the secondary effects of this they are terrible to imagine. But I can assure you that we're going to have a lot of people using substances, because you can't go through that and not have therapy and be normal. It's not possible. And so to remain sane, they will start abusing substances. Many would venture into suicide. Others will take up arms as a form of retaliation, as a form of revenge. And so depression is, even as bad as it is, it's not the worst that can happen to victims after they come out. It's not the worst.
Yeah, from your discussion, I can see so many other angles coming out, like stigmatization, lack of patriotism,
Yes.
substance abuse. But we'll discuss more on this when we come back. So if you are just joining us, the program is still Candid Talk with Zainab Suleiman Okino. And we have been discussing the topic abductions, coping with trauma and depression. And my guest is still Dr. Paul Ede Agbo, a consultant psychiatrist. So let's take a short break. The program continues shortly. Please don't go away. Welcome back to Candid Talk with Zainab Suleiman Okino. We are discussing the topic, abductions, coping with trauma and depression. My guest has been Dr. Paul Ede Agbo, a consultant psychiatrist. So, doctor, what's your advice to families whose relations are in captivity right now?
One, seek therapy. Get a professional to help you through this period. It's not something that you can do alone. Two, get friends, people who can actually be there just to hold your hand, because and then don't blame yourself. There's nothing you could have done. I don't think anybody wants their relative to be kidnapped. Because this issue of self-blame, if I had known, I wouldn't have allowed. No, please. It has happened. Let's move forward. So the first thing is don't blame yourself. It has happened. Not blaming yourself gives you a clear head to think. Two, get people who you know are your friends to talk to. And then get professional help. Don't keep quiet. Don't keep quiet. Don't keep quiet. And then when the person comes out, let's not ostracize people. The way this thing is going, nobody knows who is next, really. And we don't even know, to the extent that we want to leave, we would think that those who come out alive are better off. But when you hear some of the stories and the after effects and how these victims become, you just wonder really whether it was beneficial, really, because there's no support system. That's where I'm going to. There's no support system. They come out, 2-3 weeks, they're in one center. After that, they are released. Maybe they give them scholarship. I don't think there's any system in place to follow these people up for 5-10 years. Because the trauma you are talking about, the damage you are talking about, is not something that can be gotten over in 1 year, 2 years.
Yes.
Say the Chibok, you think because you have put them through schools and maybe they graduated from secondary schools, you think the trauma is over. No, trauma is not like that. All of us, if we think carefully, have passed through trauma. Just imagine the trauma on a large scale. Probably to help you understand what we're talking about. It's not something of 2 years, 3 years, you give scholarship. No. It's a fundamental damage to the concept of humanity. So if you are not careful, this person is just damaged goods walking around. And these damaged goods may marry an innocent person and damage the person. And then they will have children and then damage the children. At the onset of the HIV pandemic, there was a behavior I noticed among people that contracted HIV. Some of them will get angry at the point of being told that they have HIV and say that, honestly, we are going to infect other people. Ask many health workers, ask many doctors. They'll tell you that at the point where you tell some people that, sir, ma, you have HIV, the first thing that will come out of their mouths is, somebody gave me, I will give plenty people before I die. That's just HIV. Imagine the trauma we are discussing. And their response is a trauma. If you look at it from the prism of trauma and responses, it's correct. They want to hit back at the perceived enemy. You have plenty people who are being released. They and they hear some weird things happening. Say, for instance, rehabilitation of Boko Haram members who kidnapped me and raped me for how many? What you think that person will be thinking about soldiers in general or the Nigerian state? You know, so we have to be careful that we don't breed a generation of people who have resentment against the state. Because this is where we are going. Nobody is being punished really for these crimes, and they are being the ones you are treating them with kid gloves. So you are going to create bitterness, and I hope we don't get to that stage. So there should be a structure, a system in place where victims are properly rehabilitated. And we're not talking about 2 years. We're not talking about 5 years. You follow them up until they are certified as being as near normal as possible.
But right now, we don't even have any.
We don't.
Of such.
There is no structure.
No counseling is going on. No rehabilitation is going on. So what do you think should be done?
Like I said, there has to be a reset of what this problem. We spiritualize a lot of things to the point where we're beginning to sound funny and look funny. Something will happen, you say, by the grace of God. What? Excuse me, what do you mean by that? There is a situation on ground now. And I imagine that even if you didn't know, you learn. We hear how that flooding will happen in a state in the America. And then psychologists will go and get people who have been affected to flooding, ordinary flooding. Yeah, people have been kidnapped, they are being raped. Some of them are beat every day until they pay the ransom. We are going to keep on beating you. And you think they'll just release the person and you say, go and face your cross. It's the failure of the state that has caused this. The state should take responsibility and ensure that there is proper. You are rehabilitating terrorists. Rehabilitate the victims of terrorism. I think we have some form of misplaced priority here. We don't value ourselves. If not, the priority should be the victims and their family members.
And that's what I was going to say. What victims, in terms, if you become a victim, for example, what do you do? How do you manage it such that you don't even lose your sanity?
The first thing, if we had a system in place, that system will be able to recognize people who are breaking down and they refer appropriately. So you have people who do well on just counseling. You have people who do well on psychotherapy. You have people who do well on all of this plus medication. So it's not a one cap fit all. As they are coming out, some people are resilient. Some people are resilient. They go through trauma, they come out as though they didn't. Yeah. Some, at the smell of trauma, they are down. So but if there's a system, the system will recognize what everybody needs and the point where the person has to be gently let off therapy. That's what a good system does. So even as I say this now, somebody will say it will not happen by the grace of God. The way the thing is, it doesn't appear as if these guys are going to let up in the nearest future. So we're going to have victims still propping up. Maybe the government should begin to consider a system wherein everybody that comes has that 1 month, 2 months thing in Abuja. And then when you are going back to your state, they refer you to a sister system that will track you until they say fit. If not, we are going to have a lot. There was a generation they called the drug generation. I think you are going to have a lot of people who are the generation that you call banditry generation. The only thing they've known is trauma. The only thing they've known is violence. The only thing they've known is rape. What they will generate is the same thing that they know.
So it's a big problem in the society because it's becoming systemic. And with time, we are not trying to find any solution yet.
No.
Meanwhile, all the services of psychologists, psychiatrists like you are needed. And we have graduates who studied psychology, who studied some of these courses that are relevant, sociology, relevant to the services of
the states, of the Nigeria states now.
The Nigerian state. So I don't even know where to start from. I don't know how to ask this question. How do we ensure that the state recognizes the fact that we need the services of some of these products that are coming up from the university, who don't even have jobs? And then you juxtapose that with the services needed going forward so that we don't have a banditry generation.
I think they know. I think they know. I don't think, you know, one of the very first traumas anybody will face is the trauma of failing a test or an exam. I failed once, and I know how traumatized I was. So you don't need to tell me about the trauma of failing exams. Most of the people at the helms of affairs in this country have either been military men or politicians that held sensitive positions. They know the import. Was it yesterday or today? I saw in the news Governor El Rufai is saying the bandits are setting up a parallel government in Kaduna State. They know. It's just a case of hiding, burying your head in the sand, which is what we do. I don't know what the benefit is. Maybe until somebody, I hope, is affected. That is when we will now again fire brigade approach. That's what
Nothing
we are champions
of.
Fire brigade approach. As this thing started since, I am certain that they have been talking. Drug, substance abuse is fueling this, but it's also a consequence of this. And so when you are talking about substance abuse, you are trying to tackle it. Which part of it are you actually talking about? Is it that the victims of this violence are, when you don't put them into a structure, they will look for how to take care of themselves now. So it is it's aiding banditry, but it's also a product of banditry. So they know what to do. We have well-placed nurses, we have well-placed psychologists, we have doctors who have been shouting. You can't tell me that they don't. They know. But so, the system is such that it discourages, apparently, what makes sense to the generality of people.
So you mentioned something about spirituality before.
Yes.
Does it mean that it has no place here?
Spirituality has been shown to be a very solid support in any situation, actually. Let me not restrict it to psychiatric issues. A man who has cancer, who believes in God, thrives well, better than the person who does not believe in God. Studies have shown that. So spirituality is good. But the way we are doing our own, it's not the one that makes for progress. Because we talk about spirituality and then we are lazy. We don't move. So we sit down here and say, because we believe in God, God should come and solve the problem. So, for instance, the banditry issue, some people are saying it's only God that can help
us.
Excuse me, why? So why are you around? Why are you around? Excuse me. So
why are you in government?
Why are you in government? Why are you even? It's annoying. That's the way we do our own, you know. So we leave everything up to God. So God will come and rehabilitate the terrorists, rehabilitate the victims, console family members who will sell. It was God who was giving them money to sell their property. Do you understand?
I wish we had more time. I wanted to ask about your party message. In 5 seconds, what's your party message?
Nigerians, just open your eyes and help yourself. Use what is available to help yourself in these times that we have found ourselves.
Okay, thank you very much for being here with us today and for giving us some insights into the minds of those abducted and their families. So, well, that's the much we can take on the program today, and then until we come your way again next week, do enjoy the rest of our programs.
Thank you.